Tao of life. Fortune tellers learn to avoid specifics, to tantalizingly skirt around the near edges of the abstract, pulling unconscious tells from their subjects to build their knowledge of past events and their predictions of the future. Writers of political commentary do, in large measure, a similar thing, but it is time to use a strangely appropriate crudity to shit or get off the pot. It is naive to think that one person can have an influence on 8 billion people, or even a tiny percentage of that number, or give pause or guidance to the politically powerful who are driven by the iron and steel mechanisms of power and greed. It is even more naive to think that doing nothing will make the world a better place to live. What things can be done? It is first essential to understand the odds are long, that any one person's efforts can be effective on their own. Some people might, by virtue of place and occasion, directly influence a number of others, but will have to accept being part of building in minute ways that most nebulous of structures, human expectations and habits of thought. But first, a look at some options. Derek Jensen argues for revolution, and a compelling argument it is. Humans are killing off life from the only place in the universe where we know for sure that it exists. They, actually we, are killing in a very special form called extinction, the extinguishing of species, the termination of continuous unbroken lines of DNA replication going back to the beginning of life on this planet. It is the greatest crime that there can be. Any and every living thing has the absolute right and responsibility to fight the destroyers. I say, fine, let's fight, but I also want to win. Tom Hartman says to join the Democratic Party and take it over. He also says that getting rich is just fine so long as you are one of the good rich. This represents a narrow reality that can only support a sort of status quo, missing the mark in so many ways that I'll just go on. The environmentalists, as I know, are devoted, dedicated people fighting for a desert hectare here and a riparian hectare there as hundreds of hectares are leveled and built over during the months of court hearings, private arguments, and land swap deals required for what counts as their successes. All of the actions are important and they should continue, but I don't see a recognizable body of people showing the way to live in support of a recovering earth. Preparing for a revolution, becoming an activist in a political party, creating court challenges to corporate and political environmental malfeasance, all laudable and valuable, but of themselves they do not model the daily life that would bring about balanced ecological relationships. People that use little of the earth's resources are often seen to do so because they have no other choice. They are often seen in the popular mind as poor, dirty, disheartened, and failed. This image has to be changed. Many of us, enough of us, who know what is coming must live openly and proudly with less. We must be a demonstration that less can be more, that having and using less is not a loss, but a gain. It is the only way, and therefore worth the try. As much as I respect the righteous anger of those who see the extinction of species by the foolish, mindless economic actions of a corporate world as murder times 1,000, direct revolution in any form will only exacerbate the problems of the environment and empower the military security establishment. Such action could give credence to the propaganda of environmental terrorism, confusing and frightening the public. I don't see how it could win without destroying the world it is trying to save. Working in the system is pissing in the ocean, not actually useless as implied in the metaphor, but adds in a tiny way to the volume of the ocean. Politics and wealth have the whole show rigged like a Las Vegas magic act. As long as the actions fit the script, it is possible to play at giving the magician a hard time. But go too far. That is, far enough to begin to make an uncomfortable difference, and you are made to disappear. The audience is amazed and chastened. However, some people must piss in the ocean, and some people must disappear. All great changes begin with the people. This time the changes will have to come without much in the way of armed conflict, but rather in the Gandhian style of direct and passive resistance. Its leaders must be sprinkled among the people like flowers of the field, and the leaders must be leading themselves first to successful ways of living and leading others second. The people don't have to be berated with the details of our dangers. They know them, but refuse to recognize them as long as there is no way to effectively respond. They must be shown how to live in ways that will improve our chances, shown, not told, shown that change is possible, shown that change can be positive in their lives, and shown that change can be successful in mitigating the dangers. Then and only then can the dangers be seen clearly for what they are. A few years ago, I was teaching in a small charter school. The students were mostly poor. Most were Hispanic, and many were undocumented from Central America. I was an old man, especially so in the eyes of high school students. I also often rode a bicycle to school. As my relationship with the students became more open and personal, one day a student asked me with humor, but also with a real air of question, if I was homeless. You see, in his experience, mostly only children and homeless people rode bikes. Later on, as they learned more about me, they discovered that I lived in the heart of the immigrant community, lived very simply. I was informed that I was known to my neighbors as the old Anglo man who rides his bicycle in the middle of the road. Adding to the cognitive dissonance that was an important element of my teaching style, the students also came to think of me as a genius and as someone who loved them. I have no claim to the former, though it was a useful thing for them to think, not so much about me, but rather about themselves. And I did love them. I tell this only as a demonstration of the power of personal actions that violate expectations in a good way, to create questions about how we should live. The students who rode bikes to school were not picked on so much. Students who were ashamed of living in such a poor part of town, but not poor in community, could say, "But he lives like I do, and he is smart and loves us, that crazy old man." It was a beginning. Some people must see that they have to live in the ways that will allow all life to continue in ecological harmony and proudly model that way of life for others. That is leading the way. That is the Tao of life. The few fireflies don't light the night, but they make the evening more delightful. If all I do is ease the mind of a poor child about the conditions of her or his life, that would be enough. But if enough people come to the understanding of both the need and the benefits of living in economic equanimity, there is the potential to make a difference.